Hi guys, welcome back to Scott Family Homestead. I am here today with a video I think you guys are going to love. We're going to talk about cook stoves and how to choose one for your home, whether it's an antique cook stove or one of the new models that are available, and what you should be looking for and how to decide. So we have had two different cook stoves, and we actually have a third that's ready to be installed in place of this one. We originally had the Regina cook stove, which I have a video that I will link that is a total review about that stove and how we used it and why we loved it. We're going to talk a little bit about the antique cook stove that we have here today, and you'll see that this is actually a combination one. It has the wood cook stove but also the gas feature, which the gas is not hooked up, but that's why we are looking to replace this, is so that we can have a cook stove where we can utilize the entire surface. And then we're going to talk about the new cook stove that we got. We decided not to go with the Regina, but to go with a different brand this time that we're really excited to get into this kitchen. One of the very first things you're going to have to consider is if you want a cook stove primarily for cooking, or if you're using it to primarily heat your home and you want the oven and surface for cooking kind of as a little side bonus. So that is what we did in our previous home. The Regina has a very large firebox. We used it to heat our home, and then it had a little oven that made it so we could like bake some things in there, and we used the surface all the time for hot water and frying things up in the morning and stuff like that. And so it was primarily a wood stove with the bonus of being able to cook on it. Now in this house, we're gonna put our cook stove in our kitchen, which means we don't want a big huge firebox that's gonna heat up this side of the house. So we have a primary fireplace in our living room, and what we want is a small firebox with a large oven that we can primarily use our wood cook stove for cooking. Once you have that decided, you kind of have to start to look into the logistics of your homeowner's insurance, especially here in the United States. So in our previous home, we were adding a cook stove, and since we already had an insurance company, we kind of had to follow their guidelines. They required a UL certification, and that really narrowed down what we could choose from and also eliminated the chance to put in an antique cook stove. If you are buying a home with a cook stove, you're going to have to search for an insurance company that will cover that, or they may make you remove it prior to moving in. So our insurance here said that the only way to not have this as like an additional cost on our insurance was to have it off the premises. So we are currently paying for the antique cook stove price, not the UL certified. Another financial thing to consider if you are buying a new cook stove is whether or not it is a high efficiency stove and qualifies for a home energy tax credit, because that allows you to recoup some of your investment into a new stove. The next big obvious thing that you're going to have to look at is what is your budget. So you can find an antique cook stove for $300, $500 on Marketplace or Craigslist. If you're looking at some of the newer stoves, you're talking in the thousands, 5,000, 7,000, I mean, it goes up from there. If you are looking to get an antique cook stove but you want it to be refurbished, there are very few people that do that, but it is a fantastic way to do it because you know you're getting a quality item that's been taken care of and looked through by somebody who really knows their stuff. Those are also going to cost you in the thousands generally, but you know you're getting a really nice product, and it gives you an opportunity to have an antique without having to restore it yourself. So that leads us into, are you buying a used cook stove or are you buying a new cook stove? Let's talk about, if you decide to go with a used cook stove, what you want to look for. So ours here came with the home, and it is stunning. It's beautiful. I love it. The very first thing you have to look at is the quality of it and if it's airtight. So you need to make sure it has all of its doors, first and foremost. And when you look into the firebox, it should look nice and tight. Ideally, you can ask the previous owners if they've had a fire in it and if smoke leaks out anywhere or if there are any leaks in it. A lot of people that are selling cook stoves have not used them in their home. They inherited them somehow, or they were in a garage or a barn or an old cabin or something like that, and they haven't actually lit a fire in it. If it's hooked up with a chimney like this, it's reasonable to ask them if you could have a small fire and see if it is airtight, because that's something that's going to be a lot harder to fix. Lots of great antique stoves out there. The next thing you're going to want to look for is rust and cracks. So in the finishes of a lot of these stoves, especially if you're looking on Marketplace and you're looking online, you're going to see a lot of them have rust. This one does not. We're very fortunate. But a lot of them will have rust, especially if they've been out sitting in a garage somewhere. And so it depends on where the rust is on whether or not it's a good choice for you. If there's rust on the surface and it's a cast iron surface, that's completely fixable. You can re-season the top of this like a cast iron pan, and that's not something that I worry about at all. If you've got large areas of rust on the body of the cook stove that you're looking at, that would be a little bit more alarming, and it's not really something you can fix. Another thing is like large cracks. Sometimes you'll see like somebody knocked into it and it's a big spider crack. I wouldn't take a risk on that. I saw a beautiful stove online. It had like the teal accents. You'll see if you start looking at some of the antique stoves, some of them are really cool colors, and this one had really cool teal accents on it. And then on the side that would face our dining room, it just had this huge spider crack. After I'd asked for more photos and I got that, then it was like, oh no. So I would stay away from that. They are gonna have lower prices, but you never know when that's gonna give out, because that's gonna rust and thin and it's gonna be less efficient, and eventually that stove is not gonna be any good. Now, like I said, the top you can re-season, but if the top has cracks in it or it's warped, that's another no-go. You want to make sure that all aspects of the firebox are present and accounted for. Any of the liner, the racks, anything that is supposed to be in that firebox for it to function. Now, there's a lot of antique cook stoves out there, but it's very hard to find parts for a very specific cook stove, especially because like this one, it doesn't have a model or even a brand name or a year on it. And so more than likely you're gonna have to have something custom made. So if they already have all the pieces in there, along with the oven racks, you wanna make sure all of the parts are accounted for, or you're gonna be having something custom made. The hardest thing to have custom made is the dampers, the doors, and the exterior features. So again, you want to make sure all of those are accounted for, because that's not something as easy as a grate to have replicated. I'm going to show you on this antique stove what doors I'm talking about. So you're going to have your firebox here and a clean out here. On some cook stoves, you're going to have separate doors for this, and these are really important to have airtight. The next thing you have is your oven. Here is the rack. You can see with this one it has the option of the gas down here. And then some cook stoves are going to have a water reservoir and a hookup for that, or they might have storage. This one is just a storage one. You can see it goes all the way through back there. But again, these are really important pieces to have. When it comes to being airtight, it's very important to have your firebox airtight. Your oven, not so much. It's going to be inefficient. Like this one is not perfectly airtight, but it's not going to be an air quality issue of smoke or anything getting into your home. On this stove, we've got the damper right here, which you can slide. It says shut or open. Some of the newer ones aren't labeled, so you have to read your manual or find out from the company. And the primary air intake is down here. And then there's also another little door that allows air through to help you light your fire. This is where you insert the wood on this particular cook stove. And then you can remove the rings to see more of the firebox if you need to get in there better. So they make tools for lifting these out of here. Your stove may come with one of these, and then you can see into the firebox much better. And you can utilize these tools while it's hot. And these are pretty easy to find. You just want to make sure it fits your stove. A lot of antique stoves will have a water reservoir on the side for heating water. Ours does not, but a lot of them do. Those can corrode out because the soot from the stove mixed with the water will eventually corrode the inside of those reservoirs. You're going to want to check the thickness of that and see the condition of it if it's something that you want to utilize. Some of those you can get liners to replace it, so that's always an option if the metal is thick enough to withstand the weight of the water that you want to put in there. Something that's more rare to find is a stove like this where it has the dual fuel. It's going to have the grates on top and the handles for the gas. And from what I can tell, it's not legal to have this hooked up with gas and have it as a wood cook stove as well. I think just a safety issue. This kind of evolved from when gas stoves became more of an item in American homes. The wood cook stove companies kind of wanted to salvage their operations, and well, maybe if we add gas and have it as a dual feature, we can stop people from switching directly over to gas. Some of the companies that made wood cook stoves started adding this gas feature. I don't love that it's not a flat level surface. I can't really put anything on where these grates are, and half of it is just basically unusable. This is a beautiful stove, and we're going to try to keep it in our home as a piece of furniture rather than a functioning wood stove. But I was ready for a change, and we also, for insurance purposes, wanted to go with the certified stoves to reduce our homeowners' insurance. Another thing that will decide what kind of cook stove and what design cook stove you go with is the location within your home. But more specifically, where can you put a chimney? Do you have a chimney in your house that you want to use for your cook stove, or are you installing brand new? If you're installing brand new, I do recommend going with a company that does this so that you know that it's being done the proper way. When we had our cook stove put in our other home, we had a company come in and do it, and they explained to us all kinds of things that we did not find on the internet. As far as bends and flow, they're the ones that can come to your home and say specifically, in this house, this is what we would do. If you have a current chimney, you want to make sure it's in good shape and have it inspected and cleaned and make sure that it's ready to go. And then the position of that chimney is going to kind of determine how much space you have to work with. If you're buying a new cook stove, you're going to get in the pamphlet and in the information, you're going to get your clearances. How far away it needs to be from a wall or a fire barrier. Generally, if you're putting in something like tile that is a fire barrier, you can put it closer to that wall, but it has to be approved within that manual as far as insurance purposes. And just general safety. It's a good idea to follow what they recommend for that stove. Now, the new cook stove that we picked for this kitchen, the chimney doesn't come straight out the back. It actually goes in the cook stove on the side here, so this whole thing will have to shift to the wall. So we had to be very careful about how close to this wall we could get and making sure that we had clearances set and everything, and it's going to work out perfectly. We only have to put tile on the back and on the floor. Definitely something to look into once you know where your chimney is going to go and where your cook stove is going to go. Next comes more of the fun part of shopping for a cook stove. You get to start to look and see what features you'd like. Do you want the water reservoir? Do you want a shelf on the back like this? Or do you want the warming oven? Our new one has a warming oven, and I'm really excited about that. A lot of the antique ones do too. You'll notice when you're buying a new cook stove, they'll ask you how many oven racks you want, because a lot of times you can add one and it is an additional cost. And as you look at some of the major cook stove retailers online, you'll see that they have different things you can add. So a lot of times if the stove has a warming oven, you can order it without for a little bit of cost savings. But it's up to you and how you want to use your cook stove, picking those accessories and kind of shopping for it. Along those same lines, what do you want it to look like? If you're buying brand new, you can still get an antique looking stove, like the Elmiras are really pretty as far as that goes. Or you can have a much more modern look to it, or anything in between. You're gonna have options for colors, stones. We love the soapstone on the side of our old cook stove, and our new one will have that as well. It also has it on the warming oven. And so once you have all these other factors decided, you get to decide the accessories and the appearance and what you want from your cook stove as far as that goes. This is a little peek at our new stove that we're putting in. This is a Guccia, and this is the Gulliver. It has this beautiful pattern in the casting, nice big handles. Look how big that oven is, and I got an extra rack for it. In the firebox, it has a rack so you can have a very small fire but have it close to your cooktop so that you can boil some water without having your room heated up too much. It has beautiful soapstone on it. We had an issue in shipping with the warming oven, so that we do not have to show today, but it also has this soapstone on it. And I'm just so excited to get this into our home, and I'll make a video showing you all the details of it when the time comes. If you are really serious about getting a cook stove for your home, I do recommend this book, Wood Cookstove Cookery by Jane Cooper. I found this on Amazon. I will link it below with my affiliate link. But this will give you all kinds of information, and it has recipes. It talks all about how cook stoves work, how they route air around the oven to make it so that it's a functioning oven, that sort of thing, and a lot of details of how to use your cook stove. This is kind of a generic book that works well regardless of what cook stove you end up going with, because it tells you the basics of it. What kind of wood to burn, what burns more efficiently, all kinds of things. So I do recommend this book if you are seriously considering getting a wood cook stove. Thank you for joining me today. Very soon we're going to have a video up about our new cook stove that is going in, and I can't wait to share that with you. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave them below. I would love to have a conversation about this. I really, really love having a cook stove in our home, and I would love for you to have one too. I know there aren't a ton of resources out there for wood cook stove cooking, and so I hope I can help be a resource for you. So go ahead and give us a follow, and we will have a lot more to come. I'm also going to put this list of what to look for in a cook stove up on my blog, so look for that. It'll be coming soon. ScottFamilyHomestead.com. Thank you for being here, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye, guys.